With 2024 recently coming to an end, okay, not so recently, but please pretend that's the case, I am joining the bandwagon with a list of my favorite books from last year. The list will be condensed, meaning that I rated all items on it 5 stars and that they were the highlight of my reading year. So here go my 5 favorite books of 2024. I read Pestilence twice in 2024, once in January, another in December. And let me tell you this about myself, I rarely do rereads, if ever. So that, in and of itself, speaks volumes about my obsession with this book. Pestilence is an apocalyptic dystopian romance that focuses on the first horseman of the apocalypse according to the biblical lore, namely, pestilence. Many years into the future, as humanity descends further into depravity and self-destruction, God decides the time has come to teach it a long overdue lesson. That's when he sends his 4 horsemen to earth: pestilence, war, famine, and death. Though the horseman's appearance is initially brief, it brings havoc on earth, throwing it centuries behind by destroying all traces of technology. 5 years afterwards, just as the world thought that the worst of the catastrophe has passed, Pestilence returns. This time he intends to make his stay lengthier. He has a clear but fatal mission: spread the plague until the last of Earth's inhabitants perish. Sarah Burns is a 21-year-old Canadian firefighter. Through a drawing of lots, she's chosen to stay behind as her teammates run for their lives so she can set a trap for the horseman. She intends to kill him, even if that means she'd also die in the process. When Sarah's and the horseman's paths cross, they're fatal enemies with the sole purpose of ending each other. However, things take an unexpected turn, as things do, and the two end up on a journey of forced proximity and subsequently mutual discovery. Look, let me put this out as a disclaimer. This book is not for everyone. But again, what book is? For me, it was tailored to a T. If you like a noble, gallant male main character who's also a supernatural being, but heartbreakingly guileless and innocent, then that is Pestilence. Sarah is very funny and just a really good person. The both of them together are perfect. Admittedly, I also love the apocalyptic setting a lot. If any of this sounds appealing to you, then I urge you to read Pestilence. Dance of Thieves is a book I heard about so long before I finally decided to read it. And let me tell you, I did not regret it for a second. It's a young adult romantic fantasy, but for those of you who think you're too old for YA, like I do, I promise you it's not juvenile in the least. So the story follows Cassie, a former street thief who's now one of the Rattan, the elite guard serving the Queen of Venda. She's sent to the Ballinger Kingdom on a mission to capture a fugitive. And there she meets Jace Ballinger, the new leader of his clan. Their relationship starts off rocky. There's suspicion, lies, and a lot of tension. But when the two are kidnapped and stranded together, they're forced to rely on each other to survive. From there, things start to change between them. So it's a case of forced proximity, just like Pestilence. What I loved most about this book, though, isn't just the story itself, it's how it made me feel. Cassie and Jace's relationship felt like home, as odd as that may sound. There was a warmth to it that I still can't explain. The Ballingers, Jace's family, with their history, their traditions, and their fierce loyalty to each other is something I absolutely loved. I don't come across such a trope as often as I'd like. Cassie, with all her strengths and vulnerabilities, is definitely my second favorite female main character after Jude Duarte from the Cruel Prince series. All in all, reading Dance of Thieves made me feel things. Good, rare things. If you too are in the mood for a story that will make you feel deeply, love the characters, and escape, I highly recommend it. You Deserve Each Other is one of the most well-known rom-com books. I've seen it countless times while browsing YouTube or Instagram, so I'm sure many of you have either read it or at least heard about it. Honestly, I never gave it much thought until one day, on a whim, I decided to give it a chance. I was in the mood for something light, breezy, and quick, and I figured, why not? What surprised me was how much it delivered, not just on those fronts, but beyond. Let me explain. The book is about Naomi and Nicholas, a couple who have been engaged for a year. But here's the catch. They are getting cold feet and have seemingly fallen out of love. We see everything through Naomi's perspective, and she makes it very clear that she can barely stand Nicholas anymore. Everything about him irritates her, and she laments how things have turned out between them. At the start, they were the perfect couple, madly in love, having fun and completing each other. But over time, things took a turn for the worse, and all they did was fight. Now Naomi is plotting to make Nicholas break up with her. Why, you ask? Because if she's the one to call it off, she'll be stuck covering the costs of their in-laws' lavish wedding expenses. So, the premise might sound familiar. Two people who seemingly hate each other, but are destined to end up together. It's a romance after all. But what sets You Deserve Each Other apart is how genuinely funny it is. I laughed out loud so many times while reading. For me, reading is all about escapism. I want to be fully immersed in a story and forget about real life. This book delivered that in spades. Naomi is hilarious and Nicholas is just as funny, but they're also incredibly cute and endearing. The world of this book, if I can call it that, is lighthearted and almost cartoonish, but in a good way. It doesn't have the cynicism or heaviness of real life. Instead, it gives you this comforting sense that everything will be okay, that people don't really hate each other, and that happy endings are inevitable. And the ending, it was sweet, emotional, and perfectly tied up the story. I'd recommend this book to anyone who wants to feel happy, because it's exactly what it made me feel. This is the third and final book of the Greenbone Saga series. I talked about the series as a whole being my all-time favorite fantasy series in my first video. Considering Jade Legacy is the last installment, I can't really discuss its events without spoiling those of the first and second books. I suggest you take a look at my first video for a non-spoiler synopsis of the series as a whole. But to just give you an idea of what it's about. The Greenbone Saga is an urban fantasy that takes place on the fictional island of Kekon. Kekon is the only place on Earth where jade, a magical power-granting stone, is found. It's also home to two major rivaling clans that rule both the island and its jade, and seek to reach complete dominion by destroying each other. In Jade Legacy, events evolve considerably. What I want to highlight here is how perfectly the series was wrapped up. The story spans decades, and we witness characters grow from children to adults, rulers change, the economic landscape shifts, and world powers evolve. All of this is handled expertly, with a level of detail and depth that leaves no loose ends. While the book primarily focuses on politics and economics, it never neglects its emotional core. By the end, I was deeply attached to every character. Each loss resonated with me. It felt as though I was standing alone watching the rest of my family slowly leave me, one by one, as I closed the last page of the book. That's how you know the author has done her job well. Jade Legacy is without a doubt the perfect conclusion to a once-in-a-lifetime reading experience. Secrets of Divine Love is a philosophical Islamic book and was my final read of 2024. A perfect conclusion to my reading year. It's hard to capture everything this book manages to cover in a short synopsis, but as always, I'll focus on what touched me the most. As the title suggests, the book explores how we, as Muslims, or simply as human beings really, can draw closer to God, our Creator, and open ourselves to His divine love. One thing that stood out to me, something I hadn't truly thought about before, is the idea that God's love isn't defined by our actions. He loves us regardless, always. That love never stops. What does change, though, is how we allow that love to reach us. When we stray from Him, when we act against His will or ignore His presence, it's as though we are the ones blocking His love, not the other way around. This realization was deeply comforting to me, knowing that no matter what I do, God's love is constant and unwavering, gave me an incredible sense of peace. Even when we fall, when we make mistakes, He is still there, waiting for us to return. His forgiveness is boundless, His mercy endless, and His metaphorical arms are always open. This reassurance of His love feels like an antidote to self-loathing and despair, a reminder that no matter how hard life gets, or how far we think we've fallen, God's love remains. He still loves me, still loves you, still loves all of us. This book was more than just a read for me. It was a source of healing and hope, and I'd recommend it to anyone seeking to feel closer to God and His divine compassion.